All right, you're on.
Okay. All right, what we're here to discuss tonight is this SDR product made by SDRplay. This is an SDR receiver. This is the whole piece of hardware. It's made by a company in England. You can purchase this at Ham Radio Outlet, probably some other places, but HRO probably has the best prices, and they have sales on this from time to time. This box is very simple. This model has 3 antenna connectors on this side. On the other side is a USB jack, and these 2 tiny jacks are oscillator references in and out. I have no idea what they do. I've never used them. I don't think hardly anybody uses them. So basically this is an antenna in and a USB out, and your computer with the software does the rest of the work. So there's a lot of these out there, probably not as good as this, but you'll find them on eBay and I think Amazon. Some of them are these little SDR dongles, but this guy is a pretty high quality device. It receives 0 to 2 gigs and everything in between. All different modes of communication depending on what kind of software you get for it. The normal run-of-the-mill software gives you all the normal modulation, AM, FM, sideband, CW. There are programs that do weather fax decoding. There's a lot of software available for this. It's all free. If you buy a different box, I don't know if this software I'm going to show you tonight will work on it, but there's a lot of freeware out there for these things. So you load up the software. You need a fairly good computer. I'm using an i5 quad core here, and I'm running multiple screens, and it seems to handle it very well. Right now, with the Zoom running, my system's running around 50% capacity, which is kind of high, but I've got several screens running. I've just got to minimize so you guys can't see them right now. All the information on this company is on SDRplay.com. There's a ton of stuff to read. There's a ton of stuff to download. And this, what we're going to look at is the Sdr Uno software, which can be used as a pan adapter. There are better applications for pan adapters. What I use this for is for like shortwave listening, monitoring 2 meters, 440. You can listen to a lot of different band segments at any one time. And for every receiver that you build, you've got spectrum analyzer displays that go along with it. So you not only hear the stations, you see them, you get to see what the modulation looks like. This thing is really a good education. They make 3 models. They make one, the base model has 1 antenna input, and I think that retails for around $110. They've got the next model runs for around 200, has 2 different antenna inputs, has some updated hardware, and their top of the line is a dual front end, so it's really 2 receivers in one. That's what we're going to be looking at tonight. That runs for $280, but if you're patient, there's times they'll sell that thing on sale for $230. That's the time to buy it. So from time to time throughout the year, HRO discounts these things.
Question.
And,
do you mind questioning?
Yeah, anybody wants to jump in at any time, ask questions.
You were mentioning a couple minutes ago about a pan adapter. Do they have a software that makes it comparable to like a flex radio receive screen?
Yes, it's exactly what this is going to look like.
Wow.
And with a pan adapter, you want this program to track your radio. So you know, if you're you want to get on a band and you don't know if it's busy or not, you look at the whole band in the background, and if there's other signals, you jump right to them. And they're really handy in a contest because you got to go up and down the band and listen. With this, you listen to the frequency you're dialed up to, but you see the whole band. You know what's going on. You know if there's any CW activity or FT8 activity or sideband activity. So that's what we'll be looking at here shortly.
You can tie it to your radio, and it'll receive based the same frequency your radio is.
Yes, there's three ways to hook this thing up. One is direct to an antenna. And what I'm going to show you tonight, I'm using the 2 receiver model. So one of the receivers is hooked up to my VHF UHF antenna. The other way is to share an antenna with a transceiver, and that's the best way to use it as a pan adapter. There's an auxiliary program that goes along with this called OmniRig that makes this program track your radio. It's really easy to set up, and when you turn the dial on your radio, it's like turning the dial on the software here. When you turn the dial on the software, it turns the dial on the radio. And so it synchronizes this program to the radio. The other way to use this, if you have a radio that has an IF output, and that's what I'm using on HF shortwave right now. The reason I'm doing that, it gives this thing a little extra protection, and it takes advantage of the high quality front end of a commercial transceiver. I've got a K3 here, and I'm running the 8.215 IF megahertz IF output. It's really looking at that, plus or minus a few hundred kilohertz. And again, the OmniRig does the job, and you put in the offset for the IF, it synchronizes everything. This thing is just really slick to play with. It's an education. It's worth buying it for the education you're going to get on what you're going to learn on the radio spectrum and everything. So now when I use the IF, it doesn't work that well. This program does not work that well as a pan adapter because it doesn't track some of the mode changes. When you change modes to CW and SSB, there's a frequency shift, and right now this thing doesn't account for it. There is another program designed to do that, and I'm gonna write these guys and ask them if they plan to add that, because every 3 months they come out with software improvements. On the roadmap, they've got a remote system in the works where you'd be able to run this thing on a computer in another home or in another state and operate it remotely. They keep coming out with more and more bells and whistles, and again, it's all free. So we're going to take a look at this. So what we have is a bunch of we're going to build a bunch of separate screens. It starts out with the Sdr Uno main screen up here in the upper left. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to allow us to select an antenna, and this says tuner 1 because I told you this is the dual model. We got a tuner 1 is in this one, and tuner 2 will be brought up in a separate piece of software. Tuner 1 and tuner 2 are both in this box that I showed you. I've got my choice of antennas here. I'm using the 50 ohm antenna. I'm running 3 receiver panels. There's some filtering here if we want to filter out AM broadcast or FM broadcast. We've got an RF gain control. Right now I'm set up in the dual mode so I can use both tuners. So what I'm going to do is start building the rest of the windows here. So I'm going to turn on this receiver. This is the receiver 1 control panel. I think they call it receiver 0. This is where you select your frequency, your modes, AM, synchronous AM, FM, CW, double sideband, lower sideband, upper. You got wide, narrow FM modes for FM broadcast or FM commercial. We've got notch filters, noise reduction, squelch, volume, pretty much everything you'd have on a radio with buttons and knobs. What's nice about this is the spectrum display. So right now I've got this set up on the AM broadcast band, with 640 out of Akron as the center frequency. And the bandwidth here runs up to 800 kilohertz down to 500. So this is what we're looking at right now. This is just a band section I wanted to look at because it's active. And if you look at the AM broadcast band, every 10 kilohertz you have a station. So we're at 640, you've got a station 650, 660, 670 on up the line here. Later on, we'll look at the ham bands. You can put the complete 80 meter band in here, 40 meter, 20 meter, 2 meter, you name it. Then we want to zero in on one particular frequency. So we've got the second spectrum. I think someone join us.
W8RWK, Dick, Rich.
Okay, we're not too far into this. We just started to show the windows. You know, later on I can review what we went over here in the first 10 minutes.
I appreciate it. I had another Zoom meeting.
Okay, well, when this is done, we'll start over and I'll show you what the hardware looks like and how we got this thing started. So what I've done here is we're building the windows. Again, this is a software-defined receiver. Everything mostly done by the computer and the software. So we started out with a main control window over here. We opened up our receiver control. We can run several receivers off of this. So this is receiver 0. Along with receiver 0, spectrum window. There's a lot of options on what we can look at. I've chose to look at the AM broadcast band with 640 kilohertz here at the center and showing all the other stations that are, allotted every 10 kilohertz up and down the band, which is how they assign AM broadcast stations. So we can look at any one of these stations in here. We're zoomed in on the center frequency, 640. So we got a second spectrum display just for 640. We'll turn that on. And if I unmute it.
And they're going to say that Reese foul. Yeah, Reese a little frustrated that time that he didn't get that offense.
Okay, so everybody hear that little piece of the ball game? So this is an AM signal. This is what an AM broadcast or any AM signal looks like. You got your carrier there and your sidebands. This occupies a 10 kilohertz bandwidth. On any SDR, these bandwidths are continually variable, and this is available not only on something like this, but almost all the rigs you're going to buy today has software defined or variable bandwidth. They used to have crystal filters. You had a good radio would have a slot for maybe 3 crystal filters. You'd have a filter for 300 hertz, 2400 hertz, 4 kilohertz for AM, or 5 kilohertz for broadcast. Each one of those filters ran about $120 a piece. So to get 3 distinct IF bandwidths, cost you upwards of $300. Now it's all done by software, and all the modern rigs have it. And it's continuously variable. And if we turn the audio back on,
Akron leading Central Michigan 56-49 in the Akron Sports Network from Learfield, Town.
So as you narrow it down, we're losing intelligibility. But when you're on the ham band, sometimes you have to do that to get rid of problems that are, adjacent channel.
Service making and catering service. You can take the great flavors of Waterloo Restaurant anywhere you go. Whether you're treating the family or holding a corporate event, you can take care of all your needs with our signature.
I can open this thing up wider than it's supposed to be, and the problem is it's going to start to pick up what you want, plus everything on the side. So a good receiver has this DSP filtering, continuously variable. And again, most of the new radios have it. All these software-defined radios have it. And it really makes it easy to dig a signal out, especially in a crowded band. We don't have that problem here because the FCC has this laid out orderly. Everybody is laid out at 10 kilohertz spacing, and they're not allowed to have a bandwidth any more than 5. So everybody's happy if all these transmitters are working properly. Okay, we got a few more things to look at here. We have a recorder panel. We can record not only this station, we can record the whole spectrum. We can record this, play it back later, and it records all of these signals. So later on, you can play this back and you can listen to this one, that one, whatever one you want to listen to. You can change modes. It does eat up a lot of memory. I've got some recordings here of things like 160 meter CW contest or a 20 meter RIDI contest, just for examples. And some of these files get really big in a hurry. You can easily rack up 4 or 5 minutes, like a gigabyte. But memory's not that costly anymore. So again, it records this whole spectrum. The wider the spectrum, the more memory it's going to use, then the longer you record. It has a scanner panel. I use that on 2 meters to scan through the repeater section, 146 through 148. Over here on the receiver control, we've got a window here for some audio accessories to adjust noise blanker, noise reduction, FM de-emphasis. This just has a lot of options. You can customize so much with this thing. And the last window is the memory panel. So the way I've got this set up, the memory panel is kind of squashed over here, and I've got this is a list of shortwave stations that I listen to. There's a lot more information in this panel because there's labels and antenna selection and all that. I got it kind of squashed over here. I'll show you a different arrangement later on, but this is one typical arrangement of all the windows to make this thing work. And I'm going to mute this thing.
5949. Okay.
I'm going to step through the channels. I'm going to step up to the next channel. Now, there's a number of ways you can step through channels. You can click up here, enter it from your keyboard. You can set the tuning step. We're going to use 5 kilohertz. Go back down here, and I'm just going to use up and down arrow. I'm going to go up to 645. 650 is the next station. So here's the next station. I don't know where they're at.
This lead back down to 8. Lauren Kristen Jackson again unopposed as he dribbles with across center court. Gets a high screen from Enrique Freeman and dribbles to the.
But if you noticed, we went from 640 to 650 and we still heard 640. That's because our bandwidth is too wide. So I'm going to go back.
Oh, there wasn't a chip loss in 6 or 7 feet of it. That one.
We adjusted the filtering properly, and now we don't hear the ball game anymore. We didn't hear much out of this guy because the signal is so weak, but that's just a good indication this receiver is working really well. We got rid of all the adjacent channel information, and this guy is just above the noise, and we're not hearing the adjacent signal anymore. Again, before IFDSP, we never had this luxury. It was crystal filters, and they were discrete bandwidths. Now we have this continual bandwidth. It really makes it easy to dig things out.
Ed, what size monitor do you use with that?
I believe this is about 21 and a half. I run this on a laptop. But what I'm running tonight is since I'm running multiple screens, I'm running multiple windows here on the program. I normally use 2 screens to run this. but it will run really well on a laptop. If you just want to run just this set of windows, will run fine on a laptop. And you plug it in the USB, plug the antenna in, and go. And it works very well. But it does work better if you have multiple screens and they're large enough. So the 21-inch works really well.
Ed?
So, yeah.
Ed, if you only have one of those windows showing, does it look a lot bigger on your screen?
No. You can adjust these. You can make this thing look any way you want. You can customize this entire layout. You can mess it up. You have 10 layouts you can store here in what they call workspaces. Right now, I'm in the workspace I call HF single screen. I want to put this back to normal. I'm going to click this, and here's my choices. I'm going to go back and click HF single screen and put it back the way it was. So I've got this configuration in memory, in one of the workspace memories, and they give you up to 10 of those. So it's extremely flexible. If the spectrum analyzer is the important part, you can make that bigger. If the memory panel is important, you can make that larger. And we'll show you that here in the next step. So I'm going to switch to a different configuration. So now I still have the main controller, and there's only one of those per tuner. I've made more room now for the memory panel. And now you can see, not only I have the frequencies, but we got the mode and the labels in here. So this is a little easier. I moved, and there's only one recorder and one scanner per tuner. But we've got multiple receivers now. So we can monitor 640. We can right now it's monitoring 574 or 558. What I really want to do now is go to the ham bands. So let's go up to 80 meters. So we're centered on 3850, and I think we have a conversation here. Try to find a good one.
In some respects, I referred to SDRplay as the poor man's flex radio.
Yeah, it really is.
Never rained heavy, but it sprinkled all day long. Right here. Come look outside.
All right, we're looking at a guy running lower sideband on 80 meters.
Sprinkle on and off all day. Not even enough to, I mean, with no puddle of water and nothing out there at the end of the.
Can you hear me over those guys when they're talking?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to shut it down for now. So this is lower sideband. Our center frequency here is at 0, and everything is on the lower side of the center frequency. Now he's not talking, but before we were looking at the AM, and you had the center frequency, and you had sidebands on both sides. You know what? I want to go back to that and show you one thing. This time I'm going to enter 640 from the keyboard. It came up in the lower sideband mode. I got to go to AM. Okay, so here's your typical AM signal. Center frequency, you got your carrier, and you got all your information, all your voice is in the sidebands. All the carrier does is it carries that stuff. But the problem with AM, it's very wasteful. You got all this power going into this carrier. And even at 100% modulation, 2/3 of your power is in this carrier. 1/3 is in the sidebands or the intelligence. So out of 100 watts, you've got 67 watts in this carrier, and that's all it's doing is bringing the signal along. It's not adding to any of the intelligibility. All the good stuff is down here in the 33%. And it's very inefficient. Another thing I want to show you.
56, Akron looking to win 3 in a row for the set.
I'm going to move this up 5 kilohertz halfway. And now we move the carrier down here. We're really looking at the upper sideband of plus the carrier, and we'll still hear him.
We will step aside. Cameron Reese with a couple of.
Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to narrow this passband and take the carrier out.
Michigan 56 on the Akron Sports Network from Learfield, IMG Tower.
Now he's getting a little weak. Let me find a better station. Let's go up here to 850. And I'm going to slide it up halfway. As long as we have the carrier in the band pass plus one of the side bands, you got an intelligible signal. If we lose the carrier, it's all garble. And that's exactly what a single sideband station sounds like, because single sideband is transmitted without the carrier. You put the carrier back in at the radio with the BFO. So instead of transmitting that powerful carrier, which is a waste of power, on single sideband, all the power goes into the sideband only. You put the carrier back, very low signal in your receiver. That's why sideband is so much more efficient than AM. So that's just kind of a little trick you can pull with this. You know, again, it's more for educational purposes and understanding how this stuff works. So let's go back to the ham band. Now they've got a keypad on here for all the ham bands, or you can change this to some of the shortwave broadcast bands, but we'll go back to 80 meters. And I think that stronger signal right around, and that says 3525, so we'll put that in here. Before I do that, I need to do that. Okay, that didn't work. I gotta do this again.
Went to Germany and spent 2 years and came back to North Jordan.
So now we're looking at a typical lower sideband signal on 80 meters.
I think it'll be a good place for you.
So we're monitoring a phone conversation there. I want to go down and see if there's any activity on FT8. So I'm going to go down to the second receiver. We got receiver 0, 1, and 2. So the second receiver, we'll put in 3573, which is the FT8 frequency. Get this guy centered. And there's all the FT8 action here. FT8's always on upper sideband, so here's your center frequency. Anybody that runs FT8 is real familiar with those sounds. Now this also has Spectrum plus Waterfall, or if you just want Waterfall. A lot of people like Spectrum plus Waterfall. I don't use that very often. I do use the Waterfall on the FT8 program, but this is just another option you have. And you've got, you can turn that on over here also. So if you're looking for certain digital patterns, you've got Waterfall capability on here. So if I'm up here monitoring this frequency and I want to know if there's anything going on in FT8, I've just found out, yeah, FT8's pretty busy. I might want to go down here to the CW section, see what's going on. It looks like I'm a little too low. We'll go up here. Again, you got to adjust your IF. Not enough traffic here to do it. Okay. So if you got the bandwidth opened up too wide, you're going to get more than one CW signal in here. You want to zero in on one. So that's what your IF DSP is for. So that's just something else you can do with this. You can open up almost, I think, 8 of these additional receivers. You're probably going to need 2 or 3 screens to do that, and that's an awful lot to listen to. I'm not sure how practical that is. I'm just showing you what it can do. I was listening to some of the air traffic control stuff on shortwave, and they're running 2, 3, 4 frequencies, so it was kind of handy to use this for something like that. You could use it on 2 meters to monitor 2, 3, 4 repeaters simultaneously. So this is just, you know, one of the capabilities of it. For right now, I'm going to shut these down. Any questions at this point? Nothing heard. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Can you get police stations, frequency, police or fire?
Yes. Yes. This is continuous, like I say, 0 to 1 gig. I think 2 gig. So, yeah, if you go to, you know, 2 meters and just keep going up the dial to like the 154, 155, 156, you pick up local fire departments. The 454, 455 band, there's still some police. Now, a lot of public safety has gone to, you know, P25, you know, trunk systems, encoded systems. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some software packages out there that would run on SDRplay here along with all that. I haven't seen any. But if they are police and fire repeaters that are just conventional repeaters like 2 meter, yeah, absolutely, you can pick those up. Okay, I'm going to go back to one station here. Okay, so we're just going to monitor 80 meters up here. I'm going to bring up the second tuner. So with this one, I'm monitoring 2 meters. Over here in my frequency list, I'm going to scan through these.
LKY repeater.
That's the repeater out of Alliance, W8LKY. Looks like there's not a lot of repeater traffic tonight. So anyway, in this case, I'm using the scan function. You've got your squelch control here. That's what these 2 lines here are, your squelch threshold and your scan threshold. That should. So you got this one little box here.
Copy that. This is K8 here. Stand by.
This is running on a separate antenna outside, scanner antenna, a disc cone. And where the HF is running off the K3 IF right now, this is running off, and our over here on tuner 2, we've only got one antenna choice, the 50 ohm. They do have provisions for a bias T if you want to send any voltage up the line to switch a preamp in or something. I don't use that, but it's, again, this just has a lot of capabilities. I'm just showing you kind of the bare bones of this tonight. You know, there's a lot of stuff that this will do, and they keep coming out with newer features all the time. All right. While we're monitoring 2 meters, let's go up and see what 160 meters looks like tonight. Okay, so here's 160 meters, 1800 to 2000. The busiest part, here's at 1840 is the FTH section. So you see that's always cranking away here. We got half dozen SSB conversations going on up here, about 4 more down here. Very little CW down here. This is probably W1AW code practice. So I got a good idea what's happening on 160 right now. This is busier than usual. A lot of nights 160 is just dead. There's quite a bit of activity. So now I'm going to show you what it looked like a year ago when I recorded one of the CW contests. So what we're doing here, another option is where this software gets its input from. Right now it's getting the input from the SDRplay box that I showed you. I'm going to stop this, go up here to options, and it's on the select input is on SDRplay. I'm going to select wave file, which is this records the spectrum in a typical wave file. And I'm going to load this. I recorded that 2 years ago. I'm going to mute 2 meters because I don't want to talk over it. There's one other thing I have to do on options is swap the I and Q, and all that means is how the frequency is laid out. Since I'm using the radio IF, the IQ came out reversed, and if I just use standard IQ setting, the high frequencies are on the low end of the dial and the low frequencies are on the high end of the dial. So I had to invert the IQ to fix that. Well, this recording I made 2 years ago used standard IQ. So when I play it back, I got to make sure I got the IQ set up right. So right now we've taken this off of the SDRplay receiver, And we're going to play back what was recorded 2 years ago. And we got a little wider band here. We're starting at 1,000 kilohertz down at the AM broadcast band. Here's 1100 WTAM. So 160 meters starts here at 1800, ends at 200. We can zoom into that here also, which we want to do. So now we're looking at 1800 to 1900. This is just the lower half of 160. And during the contest, there's lots of action here. If I open the IF wide, you just hear a myriad of signals. Everybody is scrunched in there in this contest. And if you don't have a good radio, this is what you're going to hear. So with good IF DSP here, I can narrow it down on this one frequency. So years ago, that took a high quality receiver to be able to get rid of all this adjacent channel traffic and narrow in on one. With IF DSP, it's so common now. Like I say, it's built in on all the rigs, so you don't have to have one of these. I think just about everything made today has an IF DSP chip in it. And again, they're variable. You just get a lot more radio for your dollar today than you used to because of the technology. We're listening to this in the lower sideband mode. The only reason I selected that is I can adjust each one of these sides of the window individually. With CW, if I adjust one, it adjusts the other. If I go to AM, that's what a whole bunch of CW signals sounds like on an AM radio. So without a BFO, to end up getting a beat note, and without some good DSP, that's all you would hear. This file size was no larger than 2 gigs. It's probably a 2 gig file. That's where it cuts off. It won't play one. It won't store one any more than 2 gigs. That's adjustable, but you don't want this thing to run away and eat up all your memory. So on a normal night, you don't see much CW on 160 meters. On a contest, it's wall-to-wall activity. So you got the capability of recording these spectrums. And again, it recorded not only what we see here, it recorded this whole thing. I'm zooming out now. So it recorded a lot of stuff that I didn't want. It recorded the AM broadcast band that night. So I could play back news programs from 2 years ago on here and see what's going on. So all these AM stations, I've got a short recording for them. So it's just a lot of information that can be recorded anymore. So I'm going to put this back to normal. So we'll stop it. Go back to options and put this back on SDRplay. And I've got to reverse that IQ. And I should be back. So that's what 160 meters looks like tonight. And we're a little wide here. Let's do this again. Sometimes you have to reload the information. But anyway, that's another function of this guy. So the things you have to be careful with this is it's a very sensitive receiver, but if you hook it up to an antenna and start listening to all this stuff, and you transmit 100 watts on your amateur radio transceiver 50 foot away, you might blow out the front end on this thing. So you got to be careful. That's one of the reasons I'm using it on the IF output of the radio. I have no chance of blowing this thing out. I got lots of antennas around the yard. I have the VHF on an antenna right above the house, and all my VHF antennas that transmit are at least 90 feet away. So I don't have a problem there. Plus, I'm not transmitting on them right now anyway. To use this on most radios, you'd want to share your transceiver antenna. If you want to use this as a pan adapter, they make adapters. MFJ makes one that you hook between the transceiver and your antenna line, and it's got a third port on it for the SDR. So when you're receiving on your transceiver, the SDR will be receiving. When you key your transceiver, the relay switches out the SDR, and I think it switches pretty quick. I don't know anybody that's using one in that manner, but I think MFJ also has an RF sense. So if you don't hook up the key line to that box, RF sense will also activate the relay. But I think you want the key line, because the key line always keys up first, and you've got a 50 millisecond delay before the radio outputs power. So the relay should pull much sooner than you start putting power through that relay box. So that's probably the most common way to use this. The problem, that box is $100, so now you just doubled the price of this thing. But if you're going to use it with a transceiver, you need that unless you have a transceiver that has a specific receiver output port that's run off of the internal TR switching in the radio. Kenwood TS590S has that. I don't know if any others have it right now. When they were demonstrating this product at the ham bench, and the guy from SDRplay was specifically doing that with the Kenwood there. That's a good mate with that Kenwood radio, because it's a safe way to do it, and you don't need any extra hardware. So let's go back to 2 meters. I'm going to take it out of scan, and we'll bring up WAEOC. So we've got nobody on there right now. I'm going to take it off the antenna and hook up the signal generator.
Ed, I'm going to have to sign off here. I got another commitment, but I do have one of them. I haven't, it's not currently hooked up now, but I did for a while, and I'm going to be hooking mine up again, and I really like it. It's a really nice device. So anyways, I got to run. It was nice seeing everybody, and we'll catch up with you again sometime.
All right. If you have any specific questions in the future, just give me a call, because I've played with this thing a lot, and keep upgrading the software. Every 3 months they've got an upgrade, and they're fixing things and adding new features.
Right. Thanks again. Nice presentation, and it was good to see a refresher on all this.
Okay,
Bye
Dave.
now. Yep.
Take it easy, Dave.
See y'all.
Okay, last thing I'm going to show you. I've got the signal generator pumping out an unmodulated carrier here at 147.03, and I'm going to modulate it with an FM, some audio here by FM. Okay, so as I increase the audio level, this is a 1,000 hertz tone. So on either side of the carrier, you now see another carrier there, 1,000 hertz above the carrier and 1,000 hertz below. As I increase it, you start to see more. Increase it more. This is typical of FM. The harder you modulate it, the more sidebands you generate. I guess they go forever mathematically. You get to the point where, remember I told you on AM, the carrier is just wasted power. Most of your information is only in a third of the power. At least with FM, the carrier disappears into the sidebands. And there we finally got to the point the carrier disappeared. So FM is much more efficient. All of your power or more of your power goes into the sidebands or the intelligibility with FM. If I modulate this with AM, hello. Hello, Gail.
Hi, Ed.
I'm gonna give you a tardy.
I know. I'm sorry. Today
That's okay.
just got away from us, so I'm gonna give you Fred.
Okay.
Hello, Ed.
Hello, Fred. We're just about at the end, but we can go over things again. That's not a problem. Right now, we're looking at a 2-meter signal. We got the signal generator into the SDR, and let me back it up. I was just showing everybody the difference between an AM and FM modulation. Right now, we've got a straight carrier on 14703. We're looking at the bottom 2 spectrum. This one over here is the wide spectrum, so we're tuned on center frequency on 14703. This should be a nice clean spike. The reason there's garbage here is because I've got a very cheap signal generator.
Okay.
Fred, you got the same thing, that Ramsey.
Yes.
It works, but it's kind of like a Baofeng. It gives you extra. You get the repeater and you get extra frequencies too. So that's a problem here with, because if I really drive up the signal, it gets pretty nasty. So anyway, we got 1,000 hertz tone. We're going to modulate this FM carrier. And as I bring it up slowly, we get signals now 1K above the carrier, 1K below. As I drive it harder, now we got 1K and 2K above. Drive it harder, 1K, 2K, 3K. You get all these harmonics. This is typical of how the sidebands are generated in FM, and we keep on going.
Screw it or unscrew it. Let me get some batteries for this, okay?
At that point, we're really fully modulated and the carrier disappears. So at least with FM, all of our power is going into the sidebands when we're fully modulated, not like AM. And as I bring that back down,
Here you go.
it'll narrow down. And supposedly those sidebands go on forever. That's why you need the proper filtering in the radios to get rid of that. Otherwise, you're going to be walking on the adjacent channels. Now we show the same thing under AM. Just 1,000 hertz. So with AM, you only have one sideband, you have one upper, one lower at 1,000. As I increase this, I'm getting some extra ones there, but that's due to distortion and the quality of the Ramsey here. So I'm probably over modulating the carrier at this point in time. This is probably 100% modulation. And again, 2/3 of your power is in that carrier, 1/3 in the sideband. So only a third of your power goes into your talk power. The rest of it goes into the carrier. And that's why single sideband just beats the heck out of AM. And for that matter, FM beats the heck out of AM, because we saw when we had a fully modulated FM carrier, the carrier disappeared and all the energy went into the sidebands. We still have way too much energy going into AM, and that's just typical of AM. The last thing we'll do here is use a different modulating frequency. Well, that decided not to work. Okay. All right, that's why. I'm not properly trained in the use of this equipment. Okay, we're modulating the AM now at 1500 hertz. So the sidebands are plus and minus 1500. Now we're at 1200. Now we're at 1000. So as we decrease the frequency, the sideband products are closer to the carrier.
Can I have some?
Now we're at 2000, 2800, 3200. So this is modulating it with a single frequency. If it's voice, we end up with an infinite number of frequencies, you know, in between here on the whole envelope. So let's go back up here.
Some couple more.
Go back to the AM broadcast band.
Like it was in the last two games.
So here's your AM carrier being modulated by voice. So voice has just got an infinite number of frequencies. So anywhere between 0 and 5,000 hertz. So anyway, that's the big difference on AM and FM, and that's just another thing you can do with this product is, you know, it's a learning experience. So again, you got your center frequency, you got your sidebands on both sides. AM, very, very inefficient, but it's easy to generate, and that's what they come up with back in the old days first. So Fred, what we have here, I'm going to unpopulate this screen, make it a little easier. I'm sure you've seen the SDRplay before.
Mm-hmm.
It's got 3 antenna jacks, the USB port, and these other ports are reference oscillator in and out. I've never used, I don't even know why they're in there. Probably for more of a high stability operation, but that's the hardware. And the software is Sdr Uno. It's free. It's made by SDRplay. And they make this, they make another one. I didn't write down the name of it. For pan adapters, they have a better one than this. This is more used for shortwave listening. And what I've done on this, instead of using an outside antenna for HF, I'm using the IF output of the K3. So I'm really looking at 8.215 megahertz, but they give you enough options in this software to synchronize the radio dial with the radio and program the offset in here. So even though my center frequency is really 8.215, through frequency conversion, and they do the math here, it displays the proper frequency. If I want to select anything on here, that just changed the radio. I think we got a ball game or talk show or something.
That could be a world for you to just go out and just do, take the quarterback that you always do, at least proving that.
And such a fun relationship. Those two guys really did.
So this is just an example how to use it on the AM broadcast band. You can run this thing on a separate antenna. You have to be careful you don't overload the front end with a transmitter nearby. It's one of the reasons I used it on the K3. The other reason is by using it on the K3 IF output, I get all the advantages of the K3 front end. So I get really good front end filtering out of this. So what the K3 is passing down to me right now is this entire spectrum here from 740 kilohertz to 950. Let's go look at 160 meters. Right now, the K3 is passing down the entire 160 meter band from 1800 to 2000. And this is showing all the activity here. Got a lot of single sideband going on here tonight on the upper half. Here's the FT8. We got some CW down here. There's a lot of settings and options here. And one thing, sometimes I have to readjust the spectrum gain here, the spectrum base for some reason. I think, you know, the software is still a work in progress, but it works darn good. And again, it's free, and every 3 months they're upgrading it and fixing things. So we got an AM station here at 1880. Looks like a bunch of sideband stations up here. Here's your FTA group, and the CW is running down here. And then if we want to listen to a particular frequency, right now we're monitoring 1900. We'll put in 1840 and see what's going on with FT8. Right now I don't hear anything because I'm on lower sideband. So we'll go to upper sideband. And here's all our FT8. Now, I've been able to take the audio output of this and drive the WSJ-TX program. So if you want to monitor actual FT8 signals, you can do that. It's real easy to use a virtual audio path from this into the WSJ-TX program. So if you were working 20 meter FT8 and you wanted to keep an eye on 160 and you didn't want to turn on another radio, you could use this to monitor FT8 on 160, 80, whatever band you wanted to bring up. So the other thing we showed everybody, we can run more than one receiver instance on these tuners. And by the way, this is a dual tuner unit I'm using. I got tuner 1 on HF, and tuner 2 is on 2 meters. So we're doing everything here with tuner 1 on HF. We'll go over here to 80 meters.
Where's my box?
So it brings up the entire 80 meter band, which is mostly single sideband. The way these windows are lined up is everything is adjustable here. You can customize all this stuff, and then you get it the way you want. You save it to a workspace. I call this workspace HF single screen, and I want to fix this I just reselect it to put it back the way it is. So next one I want to bring up is the same layout or close to it with 3 receivers.
Maybe we should take it in the playroom.
So now we're still monitoring 3750 up here on receiver 0. We're going to turn on receivers 2 and 3.
Let's take it all in your other room.
We can see what's going on with FT8 down here. Each one of these receivers has a separate mute button. You've got waterfall capability if you want it. If you don't like the waterfall, you just get rid of it. Same thing on the wide spectrum. So again, the K3 before the crystal filters of the IF output is sending down the line the entire 80-meter band. If you're surfing shortwave, you can get as high as 1.5 megs bandwidth out of this thing. I don't usually like to use it that wide. It's kind of hard to pick the stations out. This using a 0.5 meg wide bandwidth on this wide spectrum, it works pretty well. And then you select whatever frequency you want to look at and zero in on it. We got some CW going on down here. And again, with the IF DSP there, you shape that IF bandpass any way you want. And like I told everybody, most of the new radios have that IF DSP built in. So what they're doing here is pretty common in all the radios now. It's a little more flexible on here. This is really a radio for a tinkerer, somebody that wants to play around and you know, analyze things a little different. Again, it's a great learning experience. There's 3 models. The base model runs for about $110, has a single antenna jack, and it would do everything we're looking at here on this top screen. The newer model runs about $200, and it's got some hardware improvements. It has multiple antenna jacks, just one tuner, and then the top of the line runs about $280. That has 3 antenna jacks plus the 2 tuners, and it's available from HRO. I don't know if anybody else in the States handle it. This thing is made in England. It's well made. There's a lot of free software for it. There are cheaper competitors for this thing. If you want to look on eBay, I think even Amazon, you can find boxes that look similar to this. Probably aren't as good, but they may do the job. I don't know if they'll run this software. That's another reason I like this product, is when you go to their website, which is SDRplay.com, they got all the manuals, tutorials, YouTube videos, and a lot of software. There's software on there for...
Is that your friend there?
Shh. She's interested, isn't she?
Yeah.
Okay. She'd have fun with this. There's a lot of bells and whistles and colors and things on it. It's a lot of fun. I mean, when I'm running FT8 and there's a, you know, I'm looking for DX or something and there's a lot of time in between transmissions.
Ready?
You know, I put this on and surf shortwave, surf 2 meters. I'm going to go back to the single control here. I'm going to shut these other 2 off because it does use more computer resources. I'm running this computer at about 50 or 60% when I have all these windows on, and we got the Zoom program running, and it's running it very well. This is an i5 quad core. It's a Hewlett-Packard. It's a reconditioned computer. It's nothing new. These were made 6-7 years ago, and it runs it just fine. I've purchased these computers used from Walmart. They go through a third-party vendor, and the last one I looked at was for sale for $160. They come in brand new. They've got Windows 10 Pro. They've got the i5 quad core. They're a hell of a bargain, and they have 10 real USB ports plus a DB9 port, because this particular computer, I've got 8 of the 10 USB ports used up, whether I'm connecting to a signal link or to the SDR here, to a sound card, you name it. These are great computers. They're HP 8200s. Again, they're available reconditioned. They come in the door like new. They're great for ham use. I'm going to go back. And again, these workspaces, you control these windows any way you want. So I'm just showing you 2 variations I'm using. I'm going to go back to the single control. When I go back to single control, what I'm giving up is my memory panel. I'm going to kind of squish down over here in the right. I like this better when I can read description and everything. But what I'm going to show you the dual tuner. So we're going to go back to the other view here. And we'll bring up the other tuner. So I've got their top of the line unit here. So tuner 1 is running HF. It's into my HF antenna, or it's actually into the K3 running HF. And I got tuner 2 out to a pole next to the house, running off of the Discone antenna. Right now, looking at 2 meters, but Jane asked, could you listen to police calls and fire and all that? Yeah, anybody that's using standard repeaters. This thing is 0 to 2 gigs and everything in between. So you can go up into the 154, 155, 156 area for local fire departments. You can go up into the 455 area, 452, 453. That's where a lot of the local police departments are, sheriff's office. So it receives everything, FM broadcast, just everything in between. There's a lot of dead space that isn't used anymore. TV channels are digital. I'm not sure what they look like on here. I haven't done that yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with a way to decode that through this software, because they've got a whole list of things on the roadmap, including a remote operation of this thing. So, Fred, I was going to show you, you can record this entire spectrum. There's a recorder up here. It builds a rather large file. If I recorded this, probably 5 to 10 minutes would use up a wave file as big as 1 gig. But it records all these carriers, so you can play this whole spectrum back. And what I did 2 years ago, I recorded activity on one of the 160 contests. And I showed them that before. So we're going to stop this, go up to options. Right now, the software is using the RSP box here, the SDRplay box, but we can select wave file instead. And I'm going to play back this file. I've got to make one other change up here. And this is, I think this is the CQ 160 CW contest. I recorded this spectrum 2 years ago. I recorded more than what I needed. I've got the entire AM, well, I got the AM broadcast from 1000 on up that I didn't need. I was really interested in just recording all this CW, but you can zoom in on it. And this is what the CW section looked like. This is what it looks like during any of the big CW contests. And actually, there was a few brave souls trying to run FT8 in there because we're at 1840. And you could hear some of the FT8 guys were trying to compete with the contest. I don't know how well they did. That's a crowded band. But we've got the IF DSP here. Let's go to a lower one. We'll stop that. Another one I had was for demonstration purposes. Here's a 20-meter RIDI contest. That's another example of a crowded band with all these RIDI stations competing in a contest. Normally that's pretty quiet spectrum up there, but a couple of times a year they run these contests. So this could be played back into FL Digi. Trying to think of what I use. I use one of those older RIDI Pro. MMTTY is the old RIDI program. Any of those, this outputs all this audio on a virtual audio path, a virtual USB port, and you can run that into FL Digi or WSJTX if it's FT8, and you can play this stuff back. So I guess what I like about this is when I was in the radio business, to come up with a gadget like this 35 years ago was probably $10,000 to have a display like this that would actually let us look at signals. And today with the software and the new technology, $100 will buy this for you. This is just a great educational tool. It's fun to play around with, and it just does a lot of stuff. I'm going to turn 2 meters back on here.
And then I can, enough room I can scratch it out if I change the password or anything. And then every so often when I get enough scratch outs and changes and stuff, or I need to add something.
That's a Lorain County repeater that's supposed to be Fusion compatible also. I wanted to check that one out to see if they were really using that in a dual mode. We have no plans to do that on 14703, as long as we have that one at the school in dual mode. But I was just looking around here in the last couple of days to see how much, at least when you look up the repeater book, how many Fusion stations are out there. There's probably about 7 or 8 in this area. I don't know how active they are, but obviously this doesn't decode Fusion. Again, I wouldn't be surprised somebody comes out with some software that would do that, but it doesn't do that yet. I don't know if it decodes DMR, but again, this is a continual work in progress, and all the software up to now has been no charge. And you go to the website, check their roadmap, they'll tell you when to expect a new one. The last one released was in November. I expect they'll have something new coming out here in the next month or two. So I'm going to shut this down. We'll go back to wrong setting. Each one of these windows has a menu window for settings. There's a learning curve on it, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Go back to SDRplay. See what's cooking on 80 meters. I got a minor mistake there. This thing has a local oscillator lock, and that allows this this cursor to move. But the problem is when I use it with an IF output, since the radio is changing frequency, I get a double frequency change on here, and it's really not designed to do what I'm doing here. So I've got to turn this thing off. So I've got a few extra rules to follow using the K3 IF.
Look down over your left shoulder to the ground, to the ball, when you're at the top of your backswing, then that means you.
So here's a typical lower sideband, center frequency here in the middle. We got a guy up here we're not hearing because the IF window is just letting through this information and not that.
I'm going to shamefully admit this. I was looking at these videos for. Well, at the time I was.
If the IF's too wide, it brings in stuff you don't want. So what you learn from this is any radio you buy, you want to make sure you got a variable IF like this with good IF DSP, because that really makes, that enables you to dig the signal out of a crowded band. Again, in the old days, you needed crystal filters, which were expensive, and they were discrete. So you'd have your choice of 2400 hertz, 300 hertz, 300 for CW, 24 for sideband, 5 kilohertz for AM, FM. Now it's in a DSP chip that they mass produce, and we get it for pennies instead of hundreds of dollars. So, any questions, guys?
It's very good, Ed.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
I mean, it's different when it's hands-on. It's, I guarantee you'd have a good time with it. 'Cause for the price, even if you get the base model, $100, it does a lot. And there's cheaper ones out there. I like this one though because you got to get one that you got a lot of software for. I find that it's a good service tool if you're working on a radio. You want to check out your modulation. You want to make sure that your IF is working. It's a neat toy. That's about all I can say. And I like gadgets. So this is, I like it so much I bought 2 of them. One of them with this dual front end and the other with a single front end. It's you go up and down a shortwave dial and you find all kinds of different looking things. And there are some software packages out there to decode some of that stuff. Like I said, weather facts and other things. And it's a continuous receiver on up to 2 gigs. I don't know how much stuff there is up there to look at. It's not cellular blocked, but all you're going to see is digital cellular, so you're not going to hear anything. So that's about the size of it. And I'm looking at my notes. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. Well, if there's no further questions, I guess that's it for tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. That was great.
Yeah,
That
thanks,
was
Ed.
a lot more than I expected, and it's really
Yeah.